the agenda slide just to walk us through what that looks like today. I'll be the host. This is sort of the welcome segment. We'll do a more defined introduction and questions circles. So you're going to get a chance to, a real treat to learn more about this circles model today. And so that's really exciting. And I won't say much about it. I'll let Martha really do the talking on the circles model, but that's more to come on that. We're going to walk through a trauma-informed assessment report. This isn't any one of your reports if you've started this. So just to say that this is a sample report so that we can learn about how one might use a report like this. And then we'll be reflecting on those results, talking about how to use those results within your organization and then next steps in Q&A. So with that, I wanted to share a little bit of background before we get to the main focus of the meeting. Next slide, please, Tamara, thanks. And I noted a moment ago, we've been building our understanding and commitment to trauma-informed systems with a particular focus on child and family serving organizations for a few years now. And this is our progress so far. And I'm just going to touch on these briefly to let you know kind of like where we've come from and where we're going. We created, became an online resource hub, which is the ACES connection. It's now PACES connection. If you're on it, you might have noticed a shift, but ACES connection, there is a San Mateo County community, and that is moderated by Mai Lee. She's currently on maternity leave, but she works with us at First Five, and we're continuing that work. But please join us. That's a great place to learn more about the work happening around ACEs and trauma in San Mateo County and to share other information or to ask questions. The market assessment survey we conducted a while back to get a sense of what stakeholders, professionals like yourselves interested or focused on trauma wanted to learn more about going forward. And so that gave us some information. We used that information to host our first broad community event, this countywide trauma convening, which was called Culture of Care. Hopefully some of you were able to attend that. It was a one-day multi-sector focused conversation and breakout sessions and lots of good panels and information about trauma-informed organizations in particular. So the systemic level of trauma-informed work, which is our initial focus. And then more recently, in February, we launched the organizational assessment tool, which we're talking more about today. And for those of you learning about the tool for the first time, it's a tool intended to be completed by staff at all levels within an organization, either an agency or department. And it looks at different domains related to trauma-informed practices. And the first session on the intro tool is recorded. We did another webinar like this, and it's recorded on our website. I'll drop that link in the chat. And along with it, in the same link, is the assessment guide, which explains more about what the tool is and how it's intended to be used. And it's more of an at a glance. So both of those are there for you to take a look at. And I'll move to the next slide. Just briefly, this is a graphic of what we intend to do with this broad initiative that we're calling our Trauma and Resiliency Informed Systems Initiative. And I'll draw your attention to the ice cream cone in the middle, the yellow graphic of the two triangles. And I talked a bit about what we'd done previously, the online trauma, resilience, and resources, and the ACES connection, the trauma training, which was our Culture of Care event. I'm looking at that inverted triangle now. And then the areas that are circled there, the assessment support is where we are today. We're talking about the assessment tool today and how it can be used and what those results can do when brought back into organizations and you know, the opportunities that come along with that. And then opportunities to come from that. So you'll see below that, it says TIO implementation support. So this is sort of one layer of that implementation support. So the assessment tool can be completed and utilized back within organizations with a lighter touch TA approach. We are also offering an opportunity for cohorts and coaching to come beyond that. And the assessment tool is sort of the ticket into that opportunity if you are interested in that as well. So that's where we are now, and we go deeper with each layer, so it's generally fewer organizations as we go down that cone and deeper support. Next. So just quickly, our team, we have an awesome team. You'll meet a lot of our great team members today. We're made up of several different entities. So just to introduce everyone very quickly, we have Hamai Consulting, who's responsible for the initiative design and cohort facilitation components of our process. Tamara and Martha are from Hamai. You can wave if you can see them in your Brady Bunch screen. We have Trauma Transformed, Antoine Moore, Irene Sung, and Ken Epstein are our primary folks. Antoine's here and hopefully can wave. Trauma Transformed, you probably know, really known for organizational coaching and expertise around trauma-informed practices. So we're really happy to have them here for the organizational coaching component. We have LFA, Alex Hildebrand and Shala De Leon. Alex is here today. You can wave, Alex. Supporting us with strategy, process, and research and evaluation functions. And then our First Five team, Jennifer Clark, Michelle Blakely, Mai Lee, and myself. And we were kind of administration, communication, sustainability, research, and eval as well. So I also do want to acknowledge, and I can't see everyone right now, we may have members of this group here, our Tracy implementation team members. So this is a group of cross-sector community stakeholders and experts who have been with us from the beginning and guided and shaped this work from inception, and just really wanted to give kudos to them, because we would not be here in this initiative without that group of incredible stakeholders who we continue to bring this work back around to and get feedback and try to incorporate their thoughts in, which have been really valuable. So I'll stop talking. I want to hand this back to our consulting team, who will take it from here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Martha. In just a little bit, Tamara will tell you more about how the cohorts will work if you are new to us today. But one of the, as Emily mentioned, we will be using the talking circle process quite a bit. And I made this graphic to show the order that we will talk in today. This will give you a little introduction to the circle process. And I can already see that a lot of people who registered are not here with us live. So take a minute and locate your name on the circle. And so if someone's not here, we'll just skip past them as best as we can. But we will start by going around the circle if Sonia is here. Emily, maybe you can jump in if you're able to see who's here. I know Ziamara.
I don't think Sonia's here. I don't think Sonia's here. But we have people.
Ziamara, you may be our first one to answer the prompts. So I'll start, and our first round is if you would tell us your name, the organization you represent, and if you took the assessment. So it goes like this. My name is Martha Brown. I'm with Hamai Consulting, and I did not take the assessment. And I will pass now, I believe, to Ziamara.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Xiomara Ochoa. I'm Deputy Director with Behavioral Health and Recovery Services. Good to see you all, and I have not taken the assessment. Do I pass it on? No.
Yes, try to keep your eye open on the screen for when you're coming up.
I think it's Erica after me.
Yes, if she's
Okay.
here, if not, Cordelia.
I believe I'm up next, but are we backtracking to Sonia?
We'll come and get her at the end.
Great. I'm Cordelia Leoncio. I'm the Grants and Contracts Manager at CORA, Community Overcoming Relationship Abuse, and I have taken the assessment. And I'm passing it on to Elisa, if she's here, or Celeste, Erin, Amanda, or Carol.
Carol, it might be you.
Hello, and nice to see everybody. I'm Carol Elliott. I am the Director of Family Support Services at Ability Path, and we have the Help Me Grow program and our Family Resource Center, and I did the assessment. So I'm going to pass to Sandra. Is Sandra here? And if it's not Sandra, then Lorena. I don't see Lorena's name on the list. Alejandra.
Yeah, I'm here. It's just under Alex. My name is Alex or Alejandra. I'm with Second Harvest of Silicon Valley. So Second Harvest Food Bank, for those that don't know the official name. And I did take the assessment this morning. And I will hand it over to Sam.
Hi, my name's Sam. I also work with Second Harvest of Silicon Valley, and I work with Alex as well. I am the project manager for the client innovation team at Second Harvest, and I have distributed and looked at the assessment, but not yet taken it. And I'll pass it along to Lizette.
Hi, my name is Lisette Hernandez. I'm the Education Director at Puente de la Costa Sur in Pescadero, and I have taken the assessment, and I'm also responsible for administering it at my organization. On to Kim.
We might be jumping all the way around to Stephanie, is that right?
Hi, I'm Stephanie. I work for the San Mateo County Libraries, and I have not taken the assessment.
Jennifer Rogers, I think, do you want to jump in there under the other?
Hi, I'm sorry, I don't have camera access right now. I'm Jennifer Rogers. I'm with the County of San Mateo Human Services Agency, and I have not taken the assessment.
Thank you. And Sonia, we'll come back to you. The prompt is your name, your organization, and whether or not you've taken the assessment.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Sonia Valenzuela, and I'm the Help Me Grow call center manager at Ability Path. I work with Carol, and I help oversee the Help Me Grow call center and our Family Resource Center of San Mateo County. And I have taken the assessment, and I'm also responsible working with Erin, our HR director, and Carol to ensure that our Family Support Services team is participating in the assessment and being available to them if they have questions and helping guide them through the process if they need support.
Great, thank you. Is there anybody we missed? Anybody who's not on our core team? I think we got everyone. All right, let's do a second round then. This one's going to go really fast because most of you have not taken the assessment, but for those of you who have, would you like to share just a brief initial reaction or any thoughts you might have had to the assessment? And Sonia, we'll start with you.
Sounds good. I think my initial thoughts are that as using a reflective practice, it definitely required more than 20 to 25 minutes, and definitely looking at it from a very organizational, high level perspective, which I think is very good. But that definitely stood out to me. I think that I thought initially that it might be more at the ground level, but I love all the components. That's my takeaway.
Thank you. I think Xiomara is next. If you didn't take it and don't have any thoughts at this point, just say pass when it comes to you.
Pass. Thank you.
I did take it. I'm also responsible for administering it at Cora. I think I'm hoping that a lot of people take it at my organization because I see how it's really drawing on, if we want a lot of honest feedback, I just really hope that we protect each other's confidentiality. That's my reaction. Thank you.
I think I am next, but if I skip somebody, please jump in. I did take the assessment, and I felt that the questions, just answering them alone and reflecting on them, generated lots of opportunities identified in my just in that just doing that assessment of, oh, this is an area where I think we could grow. I also really like that framework of we're just starting, we're still growing, we haven't started this yet. It felt very growth mindset, and just that, identifying that we're all on this path at some point.
I'm Alejandra. I think I am next. I apologize if I jumped over Sandra or Lorena. I took it this morning. I also really liked it. I think very similar comments to what Carol mentioned. I think it really kind of let you see the type of the opportunities that we are going to have. It was also kind of refreshing to see that even though there was a lot of room for improvement with a lot of the categories, the conversations are already starting in our organization, whether it's through meetings or trainings or emails. It was nice to see that our conversations are starting, yet room for improvement. So yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you.
And I've not taken the full assessment yet, but like Alex's comments, I would say that we've been circulating it at our organization now for a couple of weeks, and we've had really strong participation rates. Hoping to see a lot more over the coming days. But I would say that just from looking at the assessment so far, it's been, I think, very approachable for folks, both who have been taking the workshops that are associated with the assessment that we've been doing at the organization and those who haven't yet. And that was really great to see.
Hi, so I took the assessment. I definitely resonate with what everyone else is saying. One critique, maybe two, is it wasn't in Spanish, so I had to ask for it to be translated so that our monolingual Spanish speakers could do it. And that was just like a trickier process. Like I had to print it out for them, have them fill it out by hand, and then have someone from my team anonymously enter the information. So just in line with the trauma work, just being more mindful of the type of individuals who will be taking these assessments. The other critique I had was I noticed that a lot of these trauma assessment surveys tend to lump together EDs with managers. And so there's no genuine way of getting feedback for the two respective categories. They're always just lumped in together. So that makes it a bit difficult if a staff member wants to give feedback or commentary on like an ED position. You can't really do that because it's also collectively getting information for all managers or directors.
Is there anyone else who took the assessment that wants to share some initial reactions? Hi, Sandra. Sandra and Amanda came in, right? Welcome. We'd like to get your feedback, and Sandra will do you all the questions at once. Okay, if you could introduce your name, your organization, if you took the assessment, and if you did, can you share your initial thoughts to it? And then Amanda, we'll go to you next. Okay.
Hi, yes, my name is Sandra. I'm actually not in an organization servicing children and families immediately. I do serve as a commissioner with First Five, so I'm here to learn about the process, the assessment, and how others have experienced it. So I've not utilized the assessment. And I currently work with SFUSD, so San Francisco Unified, in my educational work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did I answer all your questions, Martha?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Amanda?
Hi, I'm Amanda Harms. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I work at Ability Path. So with Carol and Sonia, they've already had a chance to introduce themselves. I did have a chance to take the assessment. Initial thoughts, I'm just really glad that we're doing this as an organization. Originally, we were going to just do it with a smaller team and recently decided to open it up to the entire organization. And I'm just really excited about the opportunity to learn more and to discuss this as a team, because looking through the survey, I think I started to recognize how much work we still have to do in this area. And I'm excited to finally be able to put some resources behind that.
Wonderful. Is there anybody we didn't hear from? All right, I thank you all for that. It sounds overwhelmingly positive. I'm glad it's a good experience for you so far, and I really appreciate the critiques as well, because just like we are all in this to learn from and with each other. I'm going to pass this back, I think, to Jennifer now to walk you through what the assessment results look like. Thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your circle process.
Good morning, everybody. And again, I just want to echo what Martha said about thank you so much. We really appreciate hearing from you how the assessment is going, both the things that have seemed positive and also the things that we can improve as we move forward with this project. So what I am going to do this morning is a brief kind of walkthrough of the types of information you will be seeing in your summary assessment report. I'm not going to do a walkthrough of the entire report because that would take too long to go through every single different graph or table that you might see. The goal here is for you all to have an understanding of what you will be looking at when you see the graphs and how you might use that information to inform the conversations and the work that you are all doing within your agencies. Next slide, please. So the contents of the report, there will be a description of the domains. Those of you who have taken the assessment are probably familiar with these domains at this point. So there are 7 different domains that the assessment is asking questions about. The first one is safety. That's both physical and emotional safety for clients and staff within your organization. Trustworthiness and transparency. So that is assessing how well staff and clients understand how the organization functions, how it makes decisions, and how those decisions are communicated both to staff and to clients. Peer support, that of course is looking at formal and informal support, respect, trust, et cetera, among staff, and also the ways in which the organization might support their clients to access mutual support networks or peer connections. Collaboration and mutuality. This one is around the way staff work together and also the way staff work with clients to provide services and develop services. Empowerment, voice, and choice. This one is around whose voices are heard within the organization, how is feedback provided, both from clients to the organization and also from staff to folks in the management position. Cultural, historical, race, and gender awareness. That one is assessing some common sources of trauma and inclusion and that people may struggle with in terms of honoring those things within organizations. And then administrative and policy support, which is around kind of formal procedures, protocols, rules, policies that are supporting this type of work. The respondent characteristics, those are, we're collecting things like the role of the organization. So is it a direct service provider who's responding? Is it executive administration? Is this a person who's a program manager or supervisor? Do people supervise staff? We're also collecting tenure at organizations, so how many years you've been there, race and ethnic identity, gender identity, and home language as a child. I'm not going to be showing you walking through any graphs. or the way the data on those types of characteristics will be presented, because people tend to be more familiar with that. I will be walking through the graphs that are showing the average rating by domain, so the 7 domains that I just described briefly, the proportion of respondents who choose an I don't know response. Every item has the ability for someone to say, gosh, I just don't know. I don't know what our HR policies are in this area. And then we also have the trauma-informed organization development scale. So that's where just overall each respondent is able to rate their organization on a 1. We're just starting this work, to a 4. We're really, committed, and we're just nurturing this environment for our staff. And then the last thing, if sample sizes allow, given your particular organization or department, we may also have some examination of scores by respondent characteristics, which I also mentioned. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the graph that you might see for your average assessment scores. You can see that there are the 7 domains. That's the overall average. These are all rated on a 4-point scale. So it'll be from 1 through 4 as your possible range. What's most relevant here on a slide like this is really the relationship of your own agency's scores in the different domains to each other, right? So in this particular one, you can see that this agency rates itself pretty highly on peer support. So that's towards the right, 3.7. 2.8 is the overall average across all of the domains. And then you can see that the lowest score there is the administrative and policy support question in terms of how the respondents are rating. I'm also putting the little dot in that will show the overall county average. Now, I'm not putting the number in because, generally speaking, the way your agency is performing against a county benchmark is not actually relevant to the work that you need to do within your agency. However, I decided to include it because people always want to know. Like if you don't include any benchmark data, they will ask you about it. And now it's
sorry. It just crashed. I'll get it back in just a second.
Okay. So yeah, so I'm including the little dot so that people can have a general sense of across the entire county how agencies are self-reporting. However, what is most relevant to your work will be your internal information about your own specific agency. Okay, so it'll be a very similar graph for the proportion of I don't know responses. And again, this will be just the percentage of your respondents who said they don't know the answer for particular domains. This can be really helpful, right? I think if you have a lot of respondents who say, gosh, I just, in terms of something like administrative or policy support, which you see over towards the right there, or empowerment, voice, or choice, if people just don't know how your organization is handling these types of things within those domains, that suggests that maybe there aren't a lot of formal policies, or maybe those policies aren't well communicated. So that can point to some helpful information in terms of the work to do within your organization. Next slide, please. So this is the trauma-informed organizational stage of development. So stage 1 is you're becoming aware that this is an important area to work on. You're learning more about the research. You're starting to think about what you might be able to do. Stage 2, planning and testing. Stage 3, committing. And stage 4 is, you're nurturing and really adapting your internal practices to support this work. So the San Mateo County data bar on this particular slide is actual data from what we have so far across all the respondents. So you'll see 41% of all the respondents who've completed it so far, which is about 275 people, are saying that they're at stage 1. But that actually varies quite a bit. And I'm anticipating within an organization, you'll see it this in the organizational bar there, everyone is thinking about the same organization, but people are coming up with really different ideas about where they feel their organization is. And identifying that like there are differences in perspectives around where we feel like our organization is, that can be a really useful conversation starter too. You know, for the folks who feel like you're at an earlier stage of development along this, like what does that look like to you? What would it look like if you, what would you want to see within your organization to say, oh, we're at a 2, we're at a 3, we're at a 4. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so for some, we may be able to, depending on sample size, break respondents into a couple meaningful subgroups and compare. So you might see some slides like this where you're comparing 2 different groups. In this particular example, you're looking at domain scores by tenure within the organization. So it's broken up into 2 groups: staff who've been with the agency 3 years or less, and staff who've been with the agency 4 years or more. And the overall average, you can see at the end in the orange, the staff who have a longer tenure at the organization actually have sort of a lower overall rating of the organization. And then if you want to look by domain, you can see, okay, which specific domains do the folks who've been here longer have kind of different perspectives than the more recent staff members. So for safety, which is the first 2 set of bars, and for peer support, which is the third one, you can see they're pretty similar. There's not a lot of difference based on tenure. But for trustworthiness and transparency, which is that second set of bars, there's a much larger difference. So this, a graph like this can help you kind of really drive that conversation with those longer standing staff, or whichever group is, you know, expressing some more kind of room for improvement. What is it that they're seeing? What has their experience been that is kind of driving their perceptions here? Okay, next slide, please. All right, so this slide looks pretty busy, but I'm going to walk you through it a little bit. So don't feel overwhelmed by a slide that looks kind of busy. So if your agency is large enough for us to analyze the data by a subgroup, that can't really be broken down into just 2 groups, right? So something like tenure at the organization, you can just pick a cutoff and say, okay, less than this number of years, more than this number of years. But for some types of variables, you really can't just kind of say, well, less than this, more than this. You need to have multiple different groups. In this particular example, I have role within the organization. So the darkest bar is other, and then direct service staff, administration, and then management. So there are 4 subgroups. Now, in order to look at a graph like this and not start to feel overwhelmed, you just need to kind of focus on the patterns, right? You don't need to focus on the specific value of any bars, which is why I haven't actually put in the specific value for most of them. So first, you can look at the average assessment, which is the set of orange at the top. And you can see that just the overall pattern is 2 groups, the management and administration groups, overall tend to give higher ratings than those other 2 groups, which is the folks categorized as other and the direct service folks. So that's the overall pattern. You know, these 2 groups have higher ratings than those 2 groups. And then the next thing you can do to just kind of look at a graph like this, just sort of scan down all of the green groups of bars and see, well, where does that pattern play out, the kind of overall pattern, and where are there exceptions? So on this particular example, the pattern holds for that first set of green bars, right? Administrative and policy support. You can see that the administration and management, they give higher ratings. The other and the direct service, they give lower ratings. This pattern also holds for collaboration and mutuality, which is kind of towards the middle, right? But in empowerment, voice, and choice, which is, it's 1, 2, 3. It's the third green group down. They're all kind of close to each other. There's not as much of a disparity between those two groups of staff. And then if you look at peer support, which is, and safety, so safety is the very bottom and peer support is third from the bottom, you can see there's a clear break in that pattern. So the direct service staff in safety, which is the very bottom one, are quite a bit lower than all the other three groups, right? So that's how you can look at a graph like this, which has a ton of bars, and kind of get a sense of what the data are telling you without having to really focus on the numbers and like each group and, you know, getting kind of overwhelmed by the detail that might be in there. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so this is the last slide. There are also maybe tables. I mean, it's my last slide. There are more slides. But anyway, you also might see tables. So for example, the proportion of people who say, I don't know. So in this case, you have supervisors or people who are not supervisors, and how many of them said, I don't know, across these different domains. And if you look at the overall average, you see that folks who are not supervisors tend to be a little bit higher. They more frequently say they don't know, which might make sense since we are asking about things like how supervisors are trained and how HR policies function, et cetera. But if you look by domain, you'll see, for example, that last line there, administrative and policy support, there's really a huge difference. So that's how some of the, you can interpret some of the tables and kind of use that information to think a little bit about where you might have more kind of messaging or communication areas in your organization where you can move forward. Okay, all right, so that's it for my slides. And I believe that now I am handing it over to Antoine.
Okay, so hopefully that that gives you a sense of how this will work when you get your final, when you get your summary reports. And we thought that we just take a moment to have you guys have a brief conversation. Let's say that you did get your summary reports. We know that several of you actually haven't gotten your reports, but let's just say that you have a sense of what it might look like. We're going to give you, we're going to create 3 different breakout groups. And we'd love for you to choose to opt in to which one makes sense to you. So one of the groups is going to be safety. The second group is going to be trustworthiness and transparency. And the last one will be empowerment, voice, and choice. So sit for a moment and think about which of these topics for your organization has a little bit of energy. Safety or trustworthiness and transparency, which is, you know, about understanding how the organization functions and communication, that sort of thing. And empowerment, voice, and choice, whose voice is heard. So we're going to ask you to opt in. We're going to have a conversation within a small group, about 15 minutes. And we're going to be answering these 2 questions. What is your organization doing well in this domain? And what would it take to increase your scores in this domain? So right now it is 11:44. So 15 minutes, we'll have that conversation, and then we'll come back out together and we'll debrief that a little bit. Okay? And we'll have a moderator, or not a moderator, but we'll have a person on staff sitting in the room with you just in case you have any questions. Okay. Thank you. Oh, wait, one more thing. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I forgot to say the most important thing, which is we're going to come back out and talk about this. We'll need someone in your group. Please appoint someone in your group to be the report out person to talk about the takeaways.
So the groups are open. It's your choice of which group to join. So go ahead and hit join on the group that you want to hop into.
Welcome back, everyone. I am excited I know that my group had some juicy things to talk about. I'm interested to hear what other groups also came up with. So, so with respect to these three different topics, I wonder if I could have a brave volunteer to be the first group to speak after after being in small groups, so that we get a window into what happened in your small group. Safety or trustworthiness and transparency, or empowerment, voice and choice. Did you guys choose a speaker?
I can go.
Great, thank you very much.
So I was in the group of transparency and trustworthiness, and we had some good discussions. Different organizations within our group, so some folks were kind of in different places, had different areas where they thought they were doing well or concerns. So one of our folks is kind of going through a transition in their organization, so a lot of new directors and team members, and so kind of feeling like not really knowing how they're going to use this information, but knowing that this information will be really valuable and, could be an opportunity with having all these new folks on board and kind of where they can go. One thing that we talked about was how important it is to acknowledge where we're at. So if there is room for improvement and maybe we're getting some scores back where people are saying that we are lacking in this area of trustworthiness and transparency, and to acknowledge what has happened to start to build that trustworthiness, because without that acknowledgement, it's nearly impossible to move forward from there. Let's see, going beyond just saying that we have a commitment to transparency, how do we start to take action behind those words and move forward, and also getting some definition around what does transparency and trustworthiness mean to different people within the organization. And we also talked about how important it is to follow up and kind of like the feedback loops, right? So, and also being able to check in and do maybe like additional spot surveys to see if we're making improvements in these areas. I know we talked about a lot of things, so other people that were in this group, feel free to chime in if I missed something important.
Anyone else from the group wanted to add to that?
I think you covered it really well, Amanda. Thank you.
One thing I'd like to add, which we didn't talk about in the group, is I think one potential strategy for helping to establish trustworthiness and transparency is to make sure that you're clear about expectations, because I think sometimes it's the difference in expectations that causes the lack of trust. And like sometimes you can't be transparent. And like that's not a trust issue. It's like it's a practice issue. So just making sure that people are synchronized in terms of expectation could be another way to gauge. All right, so which of the other two groups would like to? Great, thank you, Sonia.
Great. So I was in the voice and choice group with Sam, with Lisette, and Martha was with us, and I can't remember someone else with the food bank. I apologize.
Alex was with us.
Thank you, appreciate that. We talked about, I think all of us really have looked at, that we're aware, there's awareness across our program and the others that there's a need for voice and choice. We talked about what we're doing, professional development, training, being a part of committees, being a part of an alliance group, and communicating. But what was also discussed was that even if some of us are trained in trauma-informed practice, oftentimes it stays at a certain level. So maybe like at the management level, and the same conversations are happening within a certain group, but transferring that down to practice at all levels, that's where we all are probably could use more work and more improvement on. And it also talks about to that what you were talking about, expectations and transparency. It's like it's very hard to, I think, across a large organization or department to do that. So I think we would all recognize that that's something we could probably improve on. And then I think what we are doing well is I think awareness is number one. Is like if you're not aware that you're not providing this across the board, that you don't even know what you don't know. So it felt like the three organizations at least were aware. And if anyone else wanted to jump in, that'd be great.
One thing I would add, thanks for speaking to all that, Sonia, is that what it sounded like was where kind of like when awareness began, like where it originated, the awareness for kind of like a trauma-informed approach or being trauma sensitive. It sounded like it was easy to kind of continue having those conversations and to improve that dialogue amongst the people that it originated with. But then, like Sonia was saying, as it kind of proliferates out to the organization and becomes cross-departmental or drifts from management down to folks, other employees, other staff within the organization, that conversation became more diluted or harder to engage with, or less consistent over time. And so, like Sonia was saying, there's a lot of improvement that can be had, I think, moving that conversation out from where it originates, even though it's going probably really well with the original team or the first few people that are really interested in the first place.
I was part of the group, and I'll add more. It's more of a question. When you start doing this kind of work, something that I've noticed is that people tend to focus on the individualistic experience, and we can't move towards the collective experience about like how do you make the organization collectively better for everyone, because everyone. And I understand this is the nature of like trauma, right? They retreat back to personal experiences, personal traumas. And so how do you, as an organization, help your staff move from this individual focus of need to the collective of the organization?
That is a great question. Yeah, let's just take a beat to like sit with that. That's $100,000 question. Yes, and hopefully, this. So, just as an example of this, you could see potentially the value of a process like this of being in group with people and having really critical questions like this come out, and like being able to be in that question over time with some thought partners, other organizations who are thinking about the very same thing for months at a time. Yeah, so thank you very much for that question, Lizette. What about the last group?
I can go for my group. This is Lorena, and my group was the one about safety. So I think similar to the group that we're talking about transparency, started with the meaning of what that word meant, and also we talk about the consistency of the message behind this word. I know Xiomara, which was in my group, she was talking about her organization instead of talking about like safe place, or they were using the word brave, because kind of like protecting that privilege and power, that work and carry on. We talk about safety also, physical safety. I know that myself and I forgot her name, Stephanie. Stephanie, we're both are coming back in person. So also the safety, the physical safety as we're coming back due to COVID. What are some of those processes and policies and pieces that we have to think about to protect, not only the employees of the organization, but also the staff. And then the other piece also is the emotional safety for the staff. In my case, we promote ourselves as a parent participation preschool program, but we do more than that. So our teachers, without having that title or credential to be a clinician, they do also a lot of mental health with our families, and how we keep them safe, when they're, hearing all this trauma, and how we actually prevent creating more trauma, within the staff. So those are the pieces that we kind of talk about. And I don't know if Xiomara, Stephanie, or Emily wants to add something to it.
Thank you. It was a great summary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think all of them were really excellent summaries. Thank you. This was really useful to hear the various groups. So thank you all for really stepping in and taking this seriously, these questions. And even though we haven't all taken this assessment, I think that was helpful. So I'm going to pass it now to Martha to talk about using the results.
Thank you, Antoine. We have prepared a results and use guide for you that you will receive with your report. And Amanda's group and some of the rest of you have already raised some issues about what you will learn through this assessment and how you use it. And so this guide is to give you some ideas, and it is strictly just a guide. You want to do the next one, Tamara? So after you prioritized your target areas to work on, we recommend, I'm going to do a really short walkthrough of the guide for you, pointing out some key points, but I encourage you when you get it to read the whole thing so you can pick up all the details. Go ahead. The guide first reviews for you the 4 key elements of trauma-informed organization, followed by the 6 principles of trauma-informed care and the definitions, which we've summarized from the SAMHSA definitions. And it's always good practice to periodically ground yourself in the elements and the principles. Next slide. We give you some suggestions on how to share the results of your assessment. This is super important. Of course, you could just email it to everyone and ask them to read it, but it would be much more fun and productive to throw a data party so people can discuss the results. You can set up small group activities, breakout rooms, if World Cafe, where people can move from room to room or table to table, depending if you're in person or online, and respond in writing to some of the results. And these are great ways to engage all staff at all levels and hear everyone's voices and perspectives. Based on the data that we've already seen from Jennifer, you can already see that depending on where you are in the organization, your perception is a little bit different on some of these things. So it'll be super important to really set up and facilitate ways that people can talk and more of those perspectives can be brought out and understood. Next slide, please. We encourage you to form a transformation group. And if you join the cohorts, you may hear me refer to those as an implementation team. It's the same thing. When you build your work group, you should try to make sure that it's truly representative of your organization so that you're getting input and ideas from across and above and below and side to side and all throughout your organization. Next slide. And one of the biggest tasks of your work group is to take the assessment report and prioritize the areas you're working on. You cannot do everything at once. You probably can't do everything. So this is a really important step, is to just choose those target areas and focus on that. Next, please. After you prioritize your target areas to work on, we recommend you make a calendar and a timeline and think about the things that you are in control of. Go ahead. This will also help you, the calendar timeline will also help you hold yourself accountable. So whether you hit the target deadlines or not, that's okay. But it is certainly a way of making sure you're continuing to move the work forward. We encourage you, as you do the work of transforming your organization, to use some process evaluation methods, simple ones, so that you can keep track of what's working and what's not, what's moving forward, what's not. And we provided you with some worksheets that you can use to guide this process, and they are available on the F5 website. We wrap up the results and use guide with some things to keep in mind as you move forward. And I'm not going to read the whole list to you here, but encourage you to take these suggestions to heart. Go ahead. And some of the big issues are to give yourself and each other grace. Change does not come easily. You'll make mistakes, and you are probably going to have some conflicts, and all of that is natural. So we encourage you to use restorative and trauma-informed dialogic processes like the circle and other processes, and language so that you can speak from the heart while speaking respectfully. And one of the things that came up in our group was use language that everybody understands as well. So, and also take care of yourself, because change can be stressful. We're all experiencing high levels of stress. And organizational change can cause stress and conflicts and some ripples. So be sure you build self-care into your processes. Next slide. And finally, as you create your implementation and transformation plan, we'd like for all of this work to result in an ongoing development of an actual plan. Be sure you build in ways to communicate and celebrate successes. When you reach a milestone, celebrate that and take time to reflect on your progress and let yourself feel good about the positive changes you're making. These kinds of things will keep you going and help you stay the course over a long period of time that it takes to create organizational change. And most of the times, these cultural, procedural, and operational changes can take 3 to 5 years to become fully embedded. So this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Do what you can, knowing that every step you take, no matter how big or small, toward becoming trauma-informed is a good step. And this process, the TRICI initiative, this team is here to help you and support you as you take all those steps. And I'll turn it back to Tamara.
Great. So I know this generated a whole lot more questions for you all, especially if you're in the middle of the assessment or haven't started the assessment. So I'm going to talk about really what now, what next. So if you want some additional support with this growth process, we're opening up some cohorts and coaching, as Emily had touched on early on in the session. So we're going to have 2 cohorts, and we're estimating that there will be about 8 organizations. That's going to vary depending on who actually is interested in participating, but about 8 organizations across these cohorts. And each organization will have, depending on their organizational structure, anywhere from 1 to 3 people, maybe possibly more, depending again on number of organizations and structure participating. And each of these cohort groups is going to meet twice a month in May and June, and then once a month in July through January, to really work through this together. So in the first phase, we're going to have a couple of sessions a month, and in each session, we're going to use the circle process to digest and work through different materials. You're also going to get some information shared. We're going to have different activities so that you can get a good foundation for really what all of this means and could look like. And then in phase 2, we're going to dive in each session into a different aspect of being a trauma-informed organization. And then we'll wrap things up in phase 3. Overall, this is a 22-hour time commitment for any participant. So over I guess it's about 10 months, or my mental math isn't great. Over the May to January period, it's 22 hours of time when we're in the cohorts together. So we're going to develop strong bonds. So we're going to get to know each other really well, and we're going to be each other's support partners as we go through this. Then Trauma Transformed is also going to be providing one-on-one coaching with the organizations. So these cohorts are going to be on, and as you're in the cohorts, you're going to work individually with the coaches to really apply this in your organization. So you'll have a goal that you're driving toward, and with the coach, you'll talk about, for your specific setting, how to make these changes, what to experiment with, how it goes, process it together. And then if there is stuff that multiple organizations are working on at the same time and it becomes relevant, the coaches might bring together just a small group of those working on a very specific thing together. But you'll be one-on-one working with a coach to drive some of the individualized work with your organizational change. So you'll be in cohorts and receiving that one-on-one coaching over the period. We just had our first session in February. This is today assessment session 2. So we're opening up today the interest in the cohorts and coaching. So after today's meeting, you're going to get an email link to the form to express interest in participating. The cohorts will start in May and conclude with phase 3 ending in January of 2022. So if you want to get this extra support, we're going to be opening up that expression of interest. As I shared, we'll send the link in the email, and it'll be on the website for Tracy that Emily had linked to earlier. And that will be due by April 11th. So I see we already have a question. So I'll stop sharing screen so I can actually see your lovely faces. So Cordelia, for organizations that can't pull together the team in time to apply to participate in a cohort, is it possible to have a single intensive session? So right now, the answer is we don't have anything planned like that. That doesn't mean that things won't emerge or that we can't put anything together. But currently, we just have the cohorts and coaching. But I think I'll leave it to Emily if you want to add anything to that generic statement.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say that we don't have anything in the works, but this is helpful for us to take back and think through together. I will say that we're building this together and with input from those of you who are taking part in this with us. And so any feedback that says, like, this is what we could do, or, we're wondering about this or have questions about that, that's all really helpful for us to be able to integrate as we think together amongst the core team members. So we can certainly note that, Cordelia, and get back to you as we know more about what might work and what we could possibly do to support. I will also say, just with the interest form, there's not a race to get those in. We will want those forms turned in by April 11th, but it's not a first come, first serve. So we're asking those of you who are thinking about this, if it's something that you want to take back and think with your agency about whether or not you want to basically apply to be a part of the cohort and coaching, you've got a window to do that and a runway to do that. So we encourage you to do that thinking and then submit the form no later than April 11th, which is generally the deadline we're hoping to stick with for those of you, again, who are interested in that cohort and coaching model. Will want to have the surveys completed by that April 11th date as much as possible, which will allow us again to integrate your data and get a report out to you at your organization in preparation for that opportunity.
And
Thank
does
you
that
for the
answer
response.
the question from Eve? Because I think that as Emily was talking, I think Eve's question was, is there more that you have?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. So I work at Life Moves, and we are just learning about this opportunity and are really excited to be hearing about it. But I was just curious. I just wanted to see, for those of us who are just here and haven't done the assessment yet, I just wanted to see like what steps would be recommended. And I thought perhaps it was to watch that video and then determine whether to do the assessment and do it, and then apply for the coaching if it makes sense. But I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything that you'd recommend to just learn more or potentially be part of the process.
Do others of you want to chime in on that, or do you want me to?
Well, my perspective would be that, yes, that sounds like a great process. You know, the assessment in itself is a process. And so you might learn like, oh, yes, this is definitely something, or, oh, no, this is definitely not something, just by starting the assessment. But as you're doing the assessment or after you watch the video, if you do have questions that come up, feel free to reach out to us, and we can help to answer things and see if that helps you to make an organizational decision.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll just add, Eve, that most of the communications around this project have been in formats just like this. So watching those recordings is really where the meat of things are. And then if you have any additional questions.
Perfect, thank you.
It should bring you up to speed pretty quickly.
Yeah,
Great.
and Eve, I'm a good person if you have questions specifically about like, oh, how would we want to structure it? Like if we decide watch the video and all of that, decide if you want to participate, and then if you have questions about like, oh, how should we do this? Do we want to assess departments separately? Do we want to, just do a subset? Do we, how does it make sense to structure the actual assessment process? I'm a good person to kind of reach out to specifically with those questions.
Great, thanks, Jennifer.
And I will just say it might be a little bit of a fast timeline, but there are still 2 weeks again before that April 11th date. And so I think it is reasonable to assume you could get moving on it and get started on it and determine whether or not you want to complete it. If that's a goal you're driving towards, it's not to say that that's the goal for every agency, but if it were to be, we're here to support that goal. So let us know, like Jennifer was saying, how we can do that best.
Great, thank you.
Could I just speak to the time commitment for 1 second? I'd like to encourage, I know everybody's working super hard under tough conditions, to not hear 22 hours and think that's a lot. In May and June, it's 2 2-hour sessions. And that's really to get everybody on the same page and do that introductory work and set ourselves up. Once we go into phase 2 in July, it's 1 2-hour session a month plus your coaching. So it is a whole lot of little tiny bites that build on each other as you move through the rest of the year. And how much, I guess, aggregate time it takes from your organization depends on how many of your staff people participate in these cohorts. But we did try to make it as manageable as possible. And one of the reasons why I'm kind of pushing you to think about those lots and lots of little bites is that cross-sector collaboration is a trauma-informed organizational practice. And these cohorts are really designed to bring different people from different organizations and different sectors together to foster that kind of collaboration. So the very act of being in those cohorts is building your own capacity for that kind of work.
So I see Cordelia's question in the chat around the availability of the summaries before the commitment. Jennifer really is the the one who knows for sure how possible that is or isn't. But I would say if you know that you will need the summary in order to kind of justify the decision to participate, then reach out to us so that we can see like what we can get together for you in time so you can make that case. Is that fair, Jennifer? Do you want to add anything? I don't want to speak for you.
Yeah, that's fair. I think a lot of it will depend on the timeline around decision making. So we aren't like formally closing any surveys on April 11th. What we're going to do is extract that data, use the data that is extracted on that date to create the summaries. And then that summary information will be what we use to then construct the cohorts, right? Because there's a lot of different things that we might think about when thinking about when deciding which agencies does it make sense to put in if we're having 2 cohorts, you know, what agencies does it make sense to put in each cohort, how to group them. So yeah, so I think that there's some time between when you'll have the summary available to you and then when there's the sort of cohort decisions being made. Sorry, my cat is like behaving crazy right now, so I'm trying to manage that.
So I am respectful of time. So it is 12:30 for anyone who did have another meeting to go to or something. Please feel free to hop off and we won't be offended. But if you do have any more questions, we're happy to stay on and answer them for you.
I want to just also extend our thanks for joining us today. We're really excited to be working with all of you. You know, if this is the only chance we get to work with you and we don't, you know, and you're just, you know, wanting to hear about the assessment, maybe try it on or think about trying it on. We're really glad that you're doing that. If you're interested in more, of course, we encourage you to reach out and let us support you in whatever ways we can. And we will have an ongoing commitment to this work. And so we hope to be a place you can come back to and a group you can check in with, you know, if your timing isn't right and you say, we really want to do this, but we can't right now too. So I just want to honor all of those different vantage points. Really thank you for your time. And again, you're welcome to stay on, but if you need to go, we thank you again.